And welcome to this panel, and I would like to welcome Dimitro as well, who, as you know, is the founder of Preply, as well as a consummated academic, I would say. You may know from his bio that Dimitro studied maths. You have a degree in maths, and you were doing your PhD, but at some stage probably it wasn't satisfactory enough, so you decided to launch Preply, along with some other co-founders. So we're going to talk about how you can scale up from a startup to a unicorn. Preply is currently a company that has over 600 workers, but you have even 100,000 tutors. Is that the figure?
Yes.
And of course, it's a unicorn because you have passed already the $1 billion valuation. So let me go back for a moment, to the founding stage, because you have two other founders. You were coding at first, so you were very much in the operations of the startup at the beginning. So how were the beginnings in Ukraine, by the way, which was the place where you founded your company? But then, of course, your country was invaded, so you had to face lots of challenges, not just as an entrepreneur, but also as a citizen. So how was the founding time?
Yep, I'm super happy to answer this. For those of you who probably are not so familiar with Preply, Preply is a global platform where people study languages with humans online. We have more than 100,000 teachers working on the platform, as you correctly mentioned, and people from all over the world learning languages on the platform. When we started Preply, it was 14 years ago in Ukraine, and we never believed that the company could be growing as fast and became such a big platform. We are now a global leader, bigger than the next 5 competitors combined. The founding story comes as a very random encounter with my co-founder. So it was a crazy time. 14 years ago was the best time to build business. The second best time is now. And we were very passionate about building startups. We didn't know what is startup, what is tech at all, but I met Kirill, who is my co-founder, and he sold me an idea. Hey, let's build an educational platform where people can study online. And I was very young. Being young brings a lot of adventureness, especially for entrepreneurial story, and I agreed, and it probably was the best decision of my life, because it turned out a real great journey for us. So it was a random personal connection through a friend to my co-founder.
So you probably felt the call from education, given that you began a PhD program, and your company is actually a platform offering language courses. And I was wondering, we were talking before, the session about the education industry. You may have attended the previous panel where also one of the speakers was the founder of a big platform. Yours is already, I guess, the biggest platform offering these sorts of education. And something that I was wondering, those of you who may be thinking about setting up your own companies, education is, of course, a very attractive industry, given that the need of learning languages, the need of learning areas, ideas, concepts, is actually general and increasing. Mm-hmm. Of course, if you compete in a non-degree area like yours, then it's much easier because you don't have regulation. But if you think, are you thinking about launching degree programs? Because once you enter that segment of education, then you confront the regulation, which I have to tell from experience. I'm president of IE. This sector is hyper-regulated, and that constrains, innovation a lot.
Yeah. Regulation is a very scary word for entrepreneur, and our target audience are young professionals, people who are 25, 35 years old, who study languages because it offers to them different life-changing opportunities, like progressing in their career or relocating to a different country. We focus on these young professionals because they also have a strong need. And probably the most important thing when building a company is to find a really appealing problem that touches hearts of many people across the world. There are 2 billion people who need to study language in the world, and that's our target addressable market. I think even though offering degrees is an interesting business opportunity, but that's not our business. Our business is to make sure that people across all of the world can study languages efficiently with a human, and that should be the most efficient way of learning a language for them.
We will come to the languages afterwards,
Yeah.
because of course the impact of AI is affecting all segments of education. But I'm now more interested in learning how you pass from being a startup to a unicorn, which is something that probably many of the participants in the audience are dreaming about. But I was wondering, what was the major challenge? Was it funding, getting, funds, supporters? And I will also, ask you what sorts of supporter, is the ideal one. But then, was it the funds? Was it the people? Was it the product? Was it the markets? What is the major obstacle for scaling up, or maybe a combination of all?
Yeah, and
Okay.
probably a combination of much more than 4. Building a startup is every second year you have a big problems that you need to solve. In the hardest years for us were the beginning years. I believe that getting from 0 to 1 million of revenues is much, much harder than getting from like 10 to 100, from 100 to 1 billion. Getting started is a harder thing because, first of all, nobody believes in the idea. You need to sell it to customers, you need to sell it to employees. Yourself, you are not sure about, is this the right idea to be working on? As soon as you start getting revenues and people are paying for your services, because paying for a service is the strongest validation of the product idea, that means that, okay, you found a product market fit and it makes sense to double down on what you're doing. So for us, the hardest years were in the beginning because we didn't have money and we didn't validate our idea. The first few years were fantastically hard. Over time, the scale of your problems changes. Sometimes your problem is attracting great talent. As you mentioned, we started in Ukraine and there was a lot of international talent in Ukraine. And we expanded very fast to Barcelona and now to London and New York to have more international presence, to be able to hire people who have done it before. By done it before, I mean like built multi-billion-dollar companies, because that's our next ambition. The next challenge can be regulations, as you mentioned, because you start facing different legislation if you operate international that you need to tackle. Sometimes you want to expand faster and then you need capital, so sometimes funding is a constraint. Unfortunately, the space for problems is unlimited. There always will be a big next problem that you'll need to tackle. The question is how you, as a co-founder, as a founder of a business, can reinvent yourself each year to make sure that you're up for a challenge of this next big problem.
I was wondering, you were talking about all the difficulties that you faced in the first phase.
Yeah.
Before you became actually a unicorn, you have to become a working startup and generate the first million, as you were mentioning. And I was wondering, what is most important, in your opinion, to attract the attention of a good investor, of good partners, good customers? Is it your profile? I mean, you almost hold a PhD, and I'm sure that you also have very good technical skills. Was it your communication skills? What was the business plan?
Yeah. I think it was definitely not our communication skills, because one of the reasons why Preply exists, because me and my co-founders, we are very bad at languages. English is not our first language, and we basically created a product for ourselves to be able to learn online efficiently, and it helped us a lot. So solving your own problem is a fantastic problem to solve. I think when we are talking about investors, what was appealing to them, I think, first of all, probably the only thing that they care is the persistence of the founders. If you, as a founder, can be persistent across the years and never give up, you are an ideal founder. And we had cases when some of our existing investors rejected us 2 times before investing. It's not an easy thing to get a rejection email from investors saying, hey, sorry, we appreciate your effort, but we would like to pass this time. And then you still want them to have them on your cap table, and you still send them your business results each month, and then after a few years they say, oh, your numbers are so good, we want to invest.
That's a very important thing. What you say, persistence.
Resistance, yeah.
So my takeaway is that you shouldn't send to hell those potential investors that don't, decide to invest in your project, but you should keep nurturing those relations over time and coming back from time to time.
Santiago, exactly. One of the things that how we think about that is like it's building lines, not dots. One interaction with an investor when you send them a pitch deck, when you meet them at this conference, for example, is a dot. Nothing happens because you just put it like something in the calendar of a person. You need to build a longer-term relationships. You need to make sure that you're aligned with them on what you want to build and what do they want to invest. So you need to build lines, not dots. For us, raising a round of financing, and we raise each 2 years. So we probably had 7 or 8 funding rounds. The latest one was $150 million this January at $1.2 billion valuation. All of these rounds took at least from 4 to 6 months. And all of these rounds were because us and our investors had a very good relationships. We had a full trust, and we had a very good alignment what we are building. One of the first questions that investors asked us when we started building Preply was, what is your ambition? Do you want to build $1 million cash cow and pay dividends, or you want to build generational iconic company, unicorn company with multi-billion-dollar valuation? And we stupidly enough answered, we want to build multi-billion-dollar company.
Ambition. Ambition is very important.
Of course.
Being humble at that stage and maybe pointing, low is not very good for attracting investors, right?
Yeah, and you need to also show the grit. Basically, your ability not to give up after rejections. Because you'll have rejections every day. Rejections from your customers, I don't want to buy your product. Rejections from potential candidates who you want to hire. I don't want to join your company. I don't believe that you'll grow. Rejections from investors, rejections from everyone, even rejections from your friends and family who will always say, look, you work on this startup, you can go and work at some bigger corporation for a bigger salary. It creates a pressure. So that's why it's also important to have a support circle from friends, from co-founders, and that's why it's much easier to build a company when there are few co-founders. And I'm very glad that I have a Kirill, who is my co-founder.
That's very interesting. And so networking is vital for the success of business. It's not just the product, it's not just the funding, but actually the universe of stakeholders that you build around your... I have a question, and it has to do with something that one of our faculty members, an economist, explained to me during the latest South Summit at Porto Alegre in Brazil. He said something, at startups and even at unicorns, and even at any other company, the important thing that investors value is actually the top line. The top line in the P&L. It doesn't matter actually the bottom line that much. Today, what counts is that you grow, you sell, and then you will, try to adjust your margins and cut the expenses at some other stage. What do you think about this? Because from an orthodox managerial perspective, it sounds a little bit, heterodox, I would say.
Yeah, I think the current markets value both profitability and growth. And the way how we think about that is there is famous rule of 40, which basically says the sum of your year-over-year growth and your EBITDA margin should be more than 40%. So if your EBITDA margin is minus 10%, but your year-over-year growth is 50% year-over-year, you're still like 40 when you add them, and it's a good result. If you're lower than 40, it means that something is wrong with the business. So we always try to balance these two numbers, and the importance of EBITDA, cash flows, P&L becomes more important as you grow. When you're smaller, investors, employees, even yourself, you care more about idea, validation, scaling, growth. As you become bigger and you start to expand into different product verticals, building different product lines, you start caring more about EBITDA, profitability, break-even. We were very lucky last year, we achieved a break-even point at Preply, and before that we were just burning money. And it was a fantastic rallying moment for the company because everybody understood, oh, it's actually a solid business. It's not only growing fast, but it also can generate cash flows and EBITDA. And it was a moment when we understood, okay, that's fantastic, let's double down. But not just blindly double down, but let's solve this equation. What is more important in the current market for our situation? Is it the growth or EBITDA?
That's really interesting, and thanks for providing, those rules. I was wondering, when it comes to finding the right partner on the side of investors, no? I mean, we have at IE many entrepreneurs, and some of them, Europeans, no, sometimes come to me and say, listen, we attracted, this American VC, and they have a different culture. They look for very quick results. They care for the short term. They don't actually realize about, the long vision. So if you compare, different cultures, different funders, different companies, what would be the ideal financial partner in order to scale up, your company and become a unicorn?
Yeah, I think the answer to that question is not only VC funds that you are looking to, but also a partner in VC funds that you will be working with. So for me, in the end, as well as in Preply as a whole, it's all about people. And in VC funding, it's also all about people. When we are fundraising, the most important thing for us is to make sure that the partners that we'll be working with and the firm, they can be strong partners and add value beyond money. If your numbers are good, you will find term sheet. Somebody will give you money. We were lucky over the last years when we had competing cases when we were able to raise from one source or from another source. But when you have this choice, you should optimize not for valuation, not for some terms in a term sheet, but you should optimize for a people that will be a long-term invested into the success of your company. For us, attracting capital, it's not only about capital, it's also about building your network. And I have an interesting story about that, because people always think, oh, investors just give me money and that they don't care. In our case, we had a pretty interesting case when our investor from Spain, Acurio Ventures, invested in 2020, and they were like following investors. They were not leading around, but they were able to introduce us to the current investor, Westcap, who brought 150 million round at 1.2 billion valuation. And it was an element of smart money, and it was about people that you work with. People, they not just write you check, but they also try to connect you to investors they know who can help you at the next stage of your journey. So that's an example of smart money, where some of your investors can be more helpful than just signing you a check.
Very interesting. I have a final question, which is actually a very ample one, but I'm going to ask you, for a short answer. So it's sorry about that.
Yeah.
But my question is, you're running a platform which relies on lots of tutors, 100,000 tutors, and AI, we all know, is transforming the landscape of education. We see that at IE, where we try, to bring agents and AI throughout all the different parts of the learning process. And learning languages is probably a very distinctive part of education. How do you see the impact of AI in your business? I don't think it will replace your tutors, for sure, because otherwise you wouldn't have 100,000 of them and growing. But how do you think it will affect, will people, given that we all have devices that allow us to translate immediately any text or even our voices, what I was wondering is how you see in the medium long term AI affecting your business.
Yeah. So Preply is human-led but AI-assisted platform. We have a lot of AI features. One of the most prominent ones is that when two humans are having lessons on Preply, we are able to understand and transcribe the lesson if they give us a consent, and then we can suggest what are the grammar mistakes that I'm making, what are the emotional topics that they discuss, what are the new words that they discussed on the lesson. So bringing AI into the learning journey can actually bring a lot of benefits for both students and tutors. For tutors, it can help to automate very routine tasks. And they are super excited because teachers don't want to send you homeworks or type personalized learning plans. They want to do what they do most, to inspire, to motivate a student to go above and beyond. They don't like routine tasks. And that's where AI shines the most. The way we think an impact of AI in education will be that AI will help to make education much more efficient. homeworks, personalized learning plans, self-learning exercises in between the lesson. All of that will be augmented with AI. But the critical part in the learning process will still be a human, because humans learn languages not to communicate with a computer. Humans learn languages to communicate with other humans. And there are so many cultural nuances in the language that you need to learn. There is a magic that happens when humans learn from the human. You have an inspiration to come for the lesson if you know that on the other side there is another human. You don't care that much about robot. If there is some AI tool, you can skip the lesson, you can skip the notification. If you know that other human is waiting for you, you will come for the lesson and be the best version of yourself. So we strongly believe that learning will be human-led, but AI assistant and Preply will be leading the way in that domain.
Dimitri, the best of lucks. Thanks so much for a very entertaining and illuminating conversation. And please join me in a round of applause for Dimitri. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Santiago.